Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Everything Is Black and White podcast live. Thank you so much for coming out. I know it's been a busy few weeks, but what a good few hours we have to come. I'm Andrew Musgrove and he is Aaron Stokes. And if you follow the podcast, this is essentially going to be the Monday show on a Thursday with some very special guests. Aaron?
Yeah, thank you very much for coming out. We know that the Cup Final was 10 days ago, but I don't think we're ready to end the celebrations yet. Well, hopefully you aren't. Thank you to the Irish Centre, as always, for letting us host, and to the sponsors, Lumo.
Newcastle's greenest train operator, connecting the city with Edinburgh, London, and proudly celebrating with the club and fans this evening. So a huge round of applause, please, to Lumo, because they've made this all possible. Thank you very much. Aaron, as we said there, we are, of course, celebrating Newcastle United's Carabao Cup victory. I'm sure for some, it hasn't quite sunk in. It hasn't for me. It did actually happen. Has it sunk in for you?
I think it has. I was away last weekend on a holiday, and I think that was probably the first time that I didn't go, an hour to hour about thinking about it. I actually had a weekend where I sort of put it out of my mind, and then I came home, and obviously we were in parade build-up, and, how amazing this weekend's going to be. I think it's all just sort of brought it back. I don't know if you know, ladies and gentlemen, if you listen to the pod, you will be aware. If you're not aware, I was very, very pessimistic, wasn't I? Even when Newcastle were 2-0 up in the 70th minute, I was thinking it's not going to happen. This man had his train tickets, his hotels booked after the second round. He was adamant they were going to win, weren't you?
Yeah, definitely. Was anyone else that confident? Oh, look at that. It was the whole room nearly. It wasn't blind faith. It was just, I don't know what it was. It was gut feeling, but I was proved to be right, and I'm so happy that we were. I'll try and contain myself, unlike at the full-time whistle when I shed 1,001 tears. I'm sure you've probably all seen it, but, we're all human, aren't we? To help continue the celebrations this evening, we'll be joined by two Newcastle United favourites later tonight, more than 200 appearances between them. It's a pleasure to welcome Ryan Taylor and James Perch back to Tyneside, so they will be with us momentarily. But first, we're going to welcome our first pair of special guests. Please welcome to the stage the Chronicle's chief sports writer, a man who's been covering Newcastle United for the last 20 years. Please put your hands together for Lee Ryder. And joining him is a legend when it comes to journalism, a man who's been writing for the Chronicle since 1966. He may have brought quite a few of you guys to tears with his rousing team talk before the Cup Final. Please welcome John Gibson.
This is red. It's not red and white.
No, we made sure.
I'm off of it is. I can tell you.
We coloured the white in just for you, John.
Okay, mate. Okay.
So, gents, thank you very much for joining us. Andrew's just asked me if it's sunk in. I think that's probably my first question to you. John, I'm going to start with you. You've been waiting longer than pretty much any of us for it to happen. You won't mind me saying. Has it sunk in for you yet?
Well, I pinch myself every morning because I've just got out of bed and I think, did I dream that? Because I've been dreaming it since originally 1955, when I was a little lad, stood with my uncle just outside the central station watching this ancient coach, single-decker, with the rooftop off, sunroof, with the team through the sunroof holding the coach, and I thought, if it goes round the corner at any speed, they're all going to fall off to one side because they were in a high wind like that. And I was starry-eyed. I was a little bairn, and I thought, this is wonderful. But I also thought it was automatic. It was the third time in 5 years. I thought, what a life I'm going to have going to dues like this for the rest of my life. Little did I know, of course. The only other time that I did a successful one was 69, when I was in the coach behind the main coach. It was the where all the hacks were in, and the members of the board and whatever in the team were in the front coach, from the airport down to St James's Park. So I've completed my hat trick of 3 parades for a successful Newcastle side, and it's taken us 70 flipping years to complete that hat trick. But hey, I'm still here and we've done it, kids. We've done it.
And for you, Lee, like we said there, you're now in your 20th year doing this job covering Newcastle United, and we were there at Wembley, and I think we were all a little bit emotional. Has it quite sunk in for you that they've finally done it?
Yeah, I've watched it a few times on telly just to make sure it did happen. But yeah, it's probably starting to process a little bit now. You just can't believe it. It's such a great feeling, and hopefully now we can go on and do something else. But you almost feel guilty that you're thinking, are we being greedy here after one trophy in 70 years? But I think realistically now, when you see that parade on Saturday, if you were emotional at Wembley, I think that's going to be times it by 10,000 when you see 150,000 fans on that field, that bus coming down. It is going to be absolutely breathtaking. We are living in history at the moment.
Yeah, certainly so. And John, we mentioned there in the introduction that I got a bit of pelters for my confidence, but we did the match preview before the final, and we were very confident. And again, some of the comments were telling us to wake up, you're in dreamland, but we really felt confident they could do it.
Yeah, we did. We actually both predicted 2-1, if you remember, which I was very dischuffed at the end because it should have been 3-0. 2-1 flat at Liverpool. They were never anywhere near as close to us as we were. And you know what was great, though? I mean, about a couple of weeks before that, when or whatever it was, when Anthony Gordon got sent off and then Lewis Hall was not there and Botman was not fit, I was low in the snake's belly. At that stage, I was low in the snake's belly. I thought, I can't believe this. I've been to 5 Wembley finals since I was that little lad standing outside the Central Station. Wembley finals, not the European. Wembley finals, 74, 76, 98, 99, a couple of years ago. I can remember the dates. They're etched on the heart because it's just under the word failure, because I was the world's greatest authority on failure because I kept reporting on it. But when we only scored 1 goal in those 5 finals, and I was down. And then, I tell you, it just turned. I just felt that as things were happening and the closer we got to final, I said, I tell you what, we're in with it. We're in with a shout here. We are in with a genuine shout. And you got the feeling that on any given day, if we put our game together, we can beat anybody. We can also get beaten by anybody because it's been on a pogo stick. But I just felt we had a great chance. And you know what? You know what pleased me, boys, was that if we had won 1-0 with an own goal in the 89th minute, after what I've experienced at Wembley, I would have said, I'll take that. Come on, I'll have more of that. I haven't got pride. I don't do pride at Newcastle United. I was bursting with pride on the final whistle. I was absolutely burst because we killed the best side in the Premier League by a million miles, by the way. They've won it already. The best side in the Premier League. We killed them from the first minute to the 115th minute, or whatever it was, when the game was over. We absolutely killed them. I mean, Mo Salah is the most feared guy in the country. He's playing on our left side, where we've just lost Gordon and we've just lost Lewis Hall, so he was supposed to rip us to pieces. I tell you what, I never saw him. He was in Livermento's back pocket the whole day. I couldn't find him. Was he there? Oh, no, he's in his back pocket. It was tough. Their great midfield, Graham Souness, who we absolutely adore as one of our greatest managers of all time, don't we? I mean, we do. Not quite. But he'd said, and rightly so, that Mo Salah might get the glory with all the goals, but really Liverpool are about the midfield, McAllister and the other two. Our 3 in midfield bullied them to bits the whole game, absolutely bullied them. And I can't think of a better way of winning the cup than the proper way. And we won it the proper way.
We certainly did. How did you celebrate?
Believe it or not, and this may surprise you, I had a little chilled white wine. I just thought, mind it's been chilled for 70 years, but I mean, I thought I can get that out now. Let's enjoy it. I mean, I celebrated by tying my ankles down to the bottom of the chair so I didn't take off, because I just was so thrilled to win at long last. It's been such a wait. And my saying nothing used to always be, keep the faith. By Jove, did we have to keep the faith? But we kept the faith and we're there now. And by the way, we're champions, boys and girls. We're champions.
I think it's at this point that I'm going to throw a question out to the audience, and I just want to show a hand. Did anybody cry at all over the weekend? Yeah, me too.
It's much easier to say who didn't cry, because everybody
I'm
cried.
just glad that it wasn't just me, but I think the reason I ask is because so many emotions were flying around Wembley. I mean, you know, I was emotional before it even kicked off. We were nervous. You were confident. I was nervous. Lee, for you, obviously, being in Wembley, you've got your journalist head on, you're in the press box, you're trying to work. Sum up how you felt, though, when that final whistle went.
Yeah, well, you've got to get your intro right as a journalist first and foremost. So that was the first thing on my mind. But I think what happened to me at the final whistle, I wanted to make sure that I was present and that I took that moment in, because we've waited for so long for it to happen. And I've been to like some big occasions, and they've kind of like just sort of. I was at the Euro 2020 final, and it was just all a blur, and I didn't get the opportunity to really absorb it. And this one, I had to make sure that I was going to absorb it fully. And then I think later when I got back to the hotel, it still didn't fully hit in. But the next morning when I woke up, looked out the window, seen Wembley, just thought, wow, that's really happened. And it's sunk in installments, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. And we were talking there about the kind of the build-up, and we learned, Lee, kind of just after the game, about some of the slight changes that Newcastle made to their preparation, such as staying outside of London the night before. How important do you think those little changes that Newcastle United made to their prep, how important was it to the resultant performance?
Yeah, absolutely massive. I remember the 2023 final against Man United, and there was some footage of the players going into the Hilton at Wembley, and I don't know if people are aware of this hotel, but you go in and pretty much the first thing you walk past is the bar. It was full of Newcastle fans, and I think it just, you know, the affection of the fans felt like it was suffocating the players a little bit. They couldn't go for the sort of pre-game walk in the morning. You could see there's actually photographs of players like Elliot Anderson like looking out the window. They look like caged birds in there, you know. But this time, much more tranquil setting at the Grove outside. They got the bus in, which is more traditional. And then I think you've seen in the first half an hour of the game, it looked like there was only going to be one winner, didn't it?
Because we spoke to someone and they said, from a club perspective, it's like they were turning up to an away day against Watford, which shows you the kind of difference that they took and different approach they took, and it worked, didn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely did. And I think, you know, John made a good point there about the players that were missing. You know, Newcastle were depleted that day. They were really, really weakened. They needed Liverpool to have an off day, which they did, but they also needed to turn up. And I think that was really telling when we were sat in those press conferences with Eddie Howe. He kept banging on about how they've learned from that 2023 defeat. They were going to do things differently. And ultimately, everything came together on the day. And as I say, John makes a good point about there. No Lewis Hall, no Anthony Gordon, no Sven Botman. That was a weakened Newcastle team, and they still got the job done, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, Livramento, a lot of people were talking about his left foot or lack of left foot, but you look at that cross that he put in, Jacob Murphy knocks it down, Isak puts it in. This team, it's one of the teams that I think we're all going to look back, and we're going to look back at them as being legends because they're the team that won the cup. But there's a lot of characters in there that everyone's grown to love. People like Bruno, Joe Linton, Isak. There's so many favourites to pick from, and I think they are right up there with probably the way all the fans look at the entertainers. I think this team in years to come are going to have the pictures in all the bars and stuff like that around the city. So it's a great time for them.
It certainly is. And, John, I always think back to you when you talk about the 1974 FA Cup final and what Joe Harvey kind of experienced, and how the Liverpool manager made a remark about how Newcastle maybe didn't feel like they belonged that day. And
Correct.
We felt that against Manchester United a couple of years ago, but 2 weeks ago, it
Totally
felt
different.
like our house.
Totally different. In 74, we were overawed. We spent a week down in London as a build-up to a final in a hotel where the minute training was over, and training was on the lawn outside the hotel, which had a gradient like that. I mean, can you believe Newcastle had organised to train like that? And boredom kicked in, everything kicked in, and I'm the greatest believer in Joe Harvey possible, and I know you feel exactly the same way. But Shanks was a wily old, he was Jimmy Cagney of football, and he tucked up in a live interview, he tucked up Joe on telly and sort of exposed how wide-eyed we were about being there, where it was just another day at the office for that Liverpool side, which went on to dominate Europe. The essence of that side went on to dominate Europe. But we were different this time. And on a little point that Aaron was saying, and we're writing that, and people have said that Liverpool didn't turn up. I tell you what, every time we lose, we are hopeless, and every time we win, the other side didn't turn up. How about giving us credit? Liverpool turned up and they weren't good enough because we bullied them out of the whole day. Do not talk to me about Liverpool not turning up. Were they all on the field? Yeah. I wasn't certain about Mo Salah because I didn't see him, but he was there, I'm assured. I looked in the programme, he was there. And so was McAllister and so was everybody else. They had more of their top players there than we had our top players there. We bullied them. We wanted it more and much more. And if you play with that desire, you're not automatically going to win. But by Jove, you've got a good chance.
Yeah, certainly so. And a man who led the cause on the day, big Dan Burn. I mean, what a few weeks he has had, John. We talk about the journey here of him getting back to Newcastle United after being released and going through the leagues, and then here he is playing at Wembley to then get the opener, then to get an England call-up, and then to make his debut for his country. I mean, you can't think of a better
it's just nonsense. I mean, Rocky, can you remember the film Rocky with Stallone? I mean, I saw that and I thought, well, this is daft. I mean, here's a little guy here who fights for a world championship. He's been a bum all his career as the term run-of-the-mill fighter, and then he wins a world title. I tell you what, this is a better story, and it's true. Dan Burn's a better story, and it's true. Why Hollywood's bothering with Wrexham, or forget Wrexham. This guy was pushing a trolley round Asda, playing for Bly Town and Bly Spartans for fun. When he got his great break, it was to go to Darlington in Wigan. I mean, you thought, what's going on here? And then late in his career, he gets a move to the club of his heart, Newcastle United. He ends up scoring a goal against Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League. He then goes to the final and scores the critical first goal, and what a belter that was. Critical first goal, and then plays for England. And I mean, God bless him, this is a bloke that hasn't quite got the pace of Usain Bolt, and yet he's doing everything that's possible. It's a wonderful, wonderful fairy tale, and it is a fairy tale, except it's true.
Just tell us about the size of his heart.
The size of a frying pan, Andrew. I always say that, and you always get me to say that on our talkings. But it is. If you said the first thing about Dan Burn, what's the first thing you think about Dan Burn? Well, you think he's as big as Gray's Monument. That's the first thing you think. But the second thing you think is big-hearted. He will never give up. He will always be there. Of course, he's got limitations. I think I've seen Messi and Ronaldo and Maradona and Pele that have nothing wrong with them at all. But that's a handful. Everybody else has got something wrong. Two of the greatest centre-halves I've seen, Bob Moncur won the European Fairs Cup for Newcastle, and it took tugs to turn Bob round. And it was the same with Bobby Moore, who's the greatest centre-half England's ever had, World Cup winning skipper, too slow to catch a cold. But he was able to cover that up. This is Dan, and I'm so pleased for the guy because it's been a tough, tough life for him. And a tough, tough life for me because he was asked to play left back. And if there's one position you don't want Dan to play, like if there's one position you don't want Joe Linton to play, it's centre forward. And if there's one position you don't want Dan to play, it's left back. Because he could play goal at that height, but because he's exposed for pace. And he's done brilliant. And he's become an England international in the same little week. I mean, that is a Rocky story. That is a Hollywood story.
I got a little bit confused for a second there. I thought you were going to compare Dan Burn to Messi and Ronaldo at one point. But
No. I could have been tempted, but I just drew that little bit away from
he
that
was,
one
he
hour.
was, he was good, but he wasn't that
But
good.
not quite that good, no.
But Lee, you were at Wembley to see England. You saw Dan Burn make his debut. Firstly, what did you make of it? And secondly, could he become the first man that we know of to go from pushing trolleys at Blythe Asda to playing for England at a World Cup?
Well, it would be nice. I mean, the way things are going, you wouldn't put it past him to be in those finals in America and Canada next year. But I think probably we all seen what happened the other day. We've seen a few mixed reports. Some of them absolutely were unfair, I would say. I watched Dan Burn, just solely in that game, you don't normally watch just one player, but because that's the one Newcastle player on show, you're watching every single touch that he had, and I thought he was immaculate. Really, just a shame he didn't get the goal to cap it off. But we're not going to complain too much about that. But I think the best thing for me as a journalist after that game was he'd done all the TV. He still had his England shirt on. He could have easily walked past the local reporter at Wembley. He didn't. He stopped. He gave us everything I needed, and I just thought that's a measure of the man. That despite that elevation right to the top, he still found it to go and talk to the local reporter who's come down, and I recognise that. So his player ratings are going to be no lower than an 8.5 for the rest of the season.
I think we should probably stop recording at that point just to hide it. Dan Burn obviously was one of the standout players of the cup final. He was a fantastic performance. Obviously, Gibbo's mentioned a fantastic header. Who else stood out for you in that final? Who were the men that really won it for Newcastle?
Yeah, well, I think, you talk about the goal from Burn. I mean, we gave every player pretty much a 10 on the day because of what happened. But if we're sort of grinding it down now, Joe Linton for me was fantastic. Just the way he was roaring every challenge that he made. As you say, what a remarkable journey from that centre forward that we watched with his head down
Incredible, isn't it?
to what he is now, this midfield enforcer. So for me, Joe Linton was immense. But I think Isak, a big shout for him. He got the goal. He terrorised the Liverpool defence. There was another goal he could have had just before he scored. There was so many big performers on the day. But, Joe Linton for me and Isak were right up there if I had to be pushed after Dan Burn.
I think I would agree with that. Joe Linton, Tino as well probably gets a mention. I think those were the three
Joe
for
Linton
me.
was fabulous. The midfield three, Tonali plays centre. He just sees everything. He's got radar vision. He's an athlete now. That 10 months out, he got himself up to scratch. Well done him. He's an absolute athlete. Bruno's an adopted Geordie. I mean, he almost ran on adrenaline. He was a Duracell bunny. I mean, he just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. I mean, Tino put Salah in his back pocket. Hey, let us not forget Trippier. 34, wasn't supposed to play in the final, wouldn't have played in the final if Lewis Hall had been fit. Did terrific for us. He rolled back the years. He made it what he used to be. And he did the same in the semi-final with Arsenal. He was absolutely good. But, as we said at the beginning, guys, you could pick any one of the 1 to 11 that started, forgetting the subs. You can come on so late. It's very difficult. I mean, Isak. We mentioned Isak. I mean, he scores what turns out to be the winner. What a surprise, eh? He got 25 goals last season, he's got 23 this season, and he's got 10 more games to add goals to. So, and by the way, they can all want him as much as they want him because he ain't going anywhere, and there's no need to go anywhere. I tell you what, this rocket's taken off for the moon. Arsenal always finish second. Never finish first, always finish second. Doesn't need to go there. Stay where you are, bunny lad. And honestly, you wonder if you'll have a statue next to Shiva, you'll be on top of Gray's monument. It'll be that high if he keeps scoring goals.
Well, we're going to talk about Isak in a bit, but we'll do it now because there have been some crazy reports over the last few days that Newcastle might consider a swap deal plus a bit of cash, which would see Núñez coming the other way. I mean, unbelievable. Lee, I mean, you were in a conversation with Darren Neils not too long ago when the accounts came out. Can you just share with our guests here, what is Newcastle's stance when it comes to Isak, the attention that he's going to get throughout the summer and also his long-term future?
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't sell your best players. You can't have enough good players. If you want to be successful, and you've got to hold on to someone like Isak, build a team around him. But then if someone comes in with that astronomical offer, and it's the business of football, and we've already heard Darren Neils say every player's got a price. Is there a tipping point? That's what would worry you. But if, let's say, 200 million comes in, that's a question people might want to answer in here. Do you look at that and reinvest it? I don't know. It's
200 million, are you selling? No. Is that important?
Who's going to bid 200 million for a start? Who's got 200 million in financial fair play? And by the way, you don't sell them.
No, I agree.
Newcastle sold Supermac and never recovered from it. When you sell your best centre forwards, the only time Newcastle have sold a quality centre forward and still done well was when they sold Andy Cole to Manchester United, and Keegan went out on the steps just round the corner up there and said, "Trust me," and he bought Les Ferdinand and Alan Shearer, which wasn't bad, like as a replacement for Andy Cole. Wasn't bad, but normally, when you sell your goal-scoring centre forward, there's only one. You can reinvest anything you want. You're going to get 3 inferior players. And how much does a guaranteed goal scorer that's going to get 25 goals a season, guaranteed, how much is he worth? First of all, you've got to find him. You've got him. It's madness. If you're going to sell him, why don't they just close down St James's Park and play on the stack?
No, I agree. Again, look at Newcastle in a very strong position as well with the length of Isak's contract, and hopefully a new deal can be agreed. Let's just briefly talk about Eddie Howe then, because we saw on after the final his emotion. It was raw. It was there. He's not really usually a man who shows too much, but he allowed himself, understandably, to get a little bit emotional. Aaron, I know you were quite intrigued at how his press conference went and kind of how it ended, because it kind of shifted from the Eddie Howe we don't usually see back to the Eddie Howe that we see every week.
Yeah, so I'll set the scene. So me and Lee were obviously sat in the press conference. We spoke to Arnie Slot, the Liverpool manager. Very graceful, very respectful. I thought it was a very good press conference from him. And then Eddie Howe sort of walks in 10 minutes later, absolutely sopping wet, soaked through, covered in beer, covered in champagne. And before he started taking questions from us, he sort of sat down and looked and said, "If you can smell anything, I apologise, it's me." And we all sort of had a laugh. Now, I love Eddie Howe as much as the next person, but you don't usually see that side of him. And I thought that was just a little bit of him letting his guard down, enjoying it. The first couple of questions of the press conference were the same. I thought he was happy, he was relaxed. And then, about halfway through the press conference, somebody asked him about Europe. And it was as if he just went back into what he knows. He was like, feet back on the ground. It's Brentford next. We're going to celebrate, but then we're straight back to work. And I think that press conference summed up, Lee, and I don't know if you agree, just exactly what he's like. Those players will be going into Brentford, and the Carabao Cup Final will be the last thing that they're thinking about.
Yeah, I think with Eddie, there'll be a cut-off point from the celebrations, and they'll have to be if they're going to get in the Champions League, because they cannot just live on this forever. As much as we will try, we might. But I think he'll have them focused again. That Brentford game is going to be key. You might have Brentford doing a guard of honour as Newcastle come on the pitch, something like that. So they're going to need to stay focused. But I think with Eddie Howe, he's there to make unpopular decisions, and we even seen one on the day, didn't we? That didn't get documented too much with Sean Longstaff. 1 minute he was coming on, the next minute there was an injury, and he changed, and Kraft went on, and to do that to a Geordie player on Cup Final day just shows you how professional and meticulous that he is. To do that to a player must have been very difficult for him, and would be interesting to be a fly in the wall over that conversation.
Certainly so, and I guess the question everyone is now asking is whether Eddie Howe is Newcastle United's greatest ever manager. So I'll ask the floor first. Is Eddie Howe Newcastle's greatest ever manager? Yes. Okay. Lee?
In my lifetime, yeah. But I suppose people will argue Kevin Keegan for what he done. He hauled Newcastle from the brink of going into the third division to almost winning the title. But there's only one man that can put a trophy on the table. That's Eddie Howe. So long may it continue.
John?
No, not yet. He can well be. But if football is all about winning, and I don't know what else it's about. I mean, what else is it about? It's about winning, isn't it? That's what gets you a knighthood, and that's what gets you the sack. It's about winning. So in winning that one trophy, he elbowed out of the way Bobby Robson and Kevin Keegan, two of the greatest managers in Newcastle history in terms of trophies, because those two guys won nothing, and I adore both. And no Newcastle fan will ever forget what they did for us. Kevin Keegan and Bobby Robson, absolutely fabulous. But this guy's got a trophy, but Joe Harvey stands ahead of him. Joe Harvey has won a European trophy, which is top of the pops. He also won the Anglo-Italian, and people can laugh at that, but you've got to go to Florence in front of 42,000 daft Italians against Fiorentina, one-off final on their ground, and we won without Malcolm MacDonald, who was away playing for England. He won 2 Anglo-Scottish. He got to a cup final. He won the second division championship to bring us up before we started. He stands as number 1 if you look at winning trophies. Eddie's number 2. Joe's career's over, bless him. Joe's passed away now. Eddie's got time to get to wherever he wants to go. And he could end up as Newcastle's greatest manager ever. But let's get carried away, but let's not. Before we build a statue or something, crikey me, we could build a statue to the 11 of them. Have we got room for 11 more statues at St James's Park? Not quite yet. Let's wait till players' careers are finished at St James's Park and then assess where they stand. Let's see what Eddie does. He could well have a statue out there. Bobby Robson's got a statue and he didn't win anything. Joe Harvey hasn't got a statue and he won something, so what's all that about? But, who knows? Alexander Isak could have a statue next to Shearer if he stays here and keeps scoring goals like he does now. There's time for those, but he's made a significant impression on the Newcastle United situation, and we can't speak more highly because it's been a tactical masterclass, both the final and the semi-final against Arsenal, an absolute masterclass.
One thing I love about Eddie Howe is that all this talk about him being Newcastle's greatest manager or statue, you know for a fact, he's just thrown that conversation right out. He's not thinking about that because he knows there's much more to achieve. This is just the beginning.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, it's just the beginning. And you know what's lovely about him is that he's so devoted to Newcastle United, he borders on being boring. His idea of a good night is to go home and have a cup of cocoa and put the television on and run through a Newcastle game that he's just watched. That is like watching paint dry, isn't it, as a bloke? But aren't we pleased that he's like that? Because that is the basis of what he does. And while he looks like a choir boy, and I mean that like he's so handsome and young looking, and while he looks like that, there's a hard streak underneath. There's got to be with any manager that's got quality, and he's got that streak. And we are delighted to have him. There were some people, and I'm talking not about Newcastle United fans, talking during a run about whether Eddie's job was on the line. That's as disrespectful and humiliating as he can get. We should be hugely grateful to have him, as we should be grateful to have Isak and grateful to have Tonali and everyone else that we may want to mention. But why I'm pleased with Eddie is Eddie tonight will be thinking what's going to happen in those 10 games because we want to be in the Champions League, who we're going to sign this summer. Because if we sign nobody in the summer, we don't stand still, we'll go backwards. Good sides plan ahead. And if we do nothing, you go backwards. You don't stand still. We've got to go forward. And he will push the board and everybody to do that. And luckily the chairman was at Wembley and saw what it was like. And of course we're all going to see what it's like this weekend. So it's all a plus. But he doesn't stand still. And we must not stand still. And I don't believe we will.
Couldn't have said it better myself. The Champions League, Lee, how important is it that they get there for next season? They stand a really, really good chance of doing so. But how important is it for Newcastle to get to the Champions League?
It's important, but hear me out on this one. It's not the end of the world if they don't, because I think they would have a real opportunity to win either the Europa League or definitely the Europa Conference League. I think some of the teams involved in that.
I think we'd win that.
I think
we're
they
in
would.
that, we'll win it.
I think they would definitely get right to the end of that one and potentially win it, as you say. So important with the money, but not the end of the world. And I think really the big test, we were talking about this down there before, weren't we? That do they tail off in these last 10 games? That's going to be they've had that high. Now what happens if they hit that low?
Well, fingers crossed they don't. So we're going to get Champions League football for next season, ladies and gents. I like the optimism in the room. Aaron?
Yeah, look, it's hard to disagree, isn't it? I think they're going to be on such a high.
You're not getting optimistic after Wembley, are you? No, you told me you were pessimistic at Wembley.
Honestly, I just can't let myself enjoy it. I think it's
well,
because he's so
at the end
optimistic.
of the season.
Yeah, exactly. I'll party at the end of the season when they've got it done. Until then, it's Coco and watching Newcastle repeat.
We're there, because Aaron usually sits on the fence. So are they going to get Champions League?
Yeah, I think they do it. I think we know that top 5 is going to be. It looks like it's going to be enough for Champions League. That's a huge boost to the Premier League. And I think the fixtures that they've got look really favourable on paper. They only play 2 teams currently above them, Arsenal and Chelsea, both at home, and the rest are below them. I think the confidence that they will get from the cup win will spur them on, and I think they'll do it definitely. And as Lee was saying, it's going to be so important because we can talk about Isak and keeping him and Bruno and Gordon all day long. We can talk about all these fancy players we want to sign, but I think without the Champions League, it becomes really hard to do that. Lee, obviously you spoke to Darren Eales, the CEO, a couple of weeks ago. He was asked, obviously, about Isak, about transfers, about the summer. What did he say to you about that?
Yeah, I mean, on Isak, they said that the contract talks are going to be in place at the end of the season. So looking good on that one, you'd like to think. Isak's already spoke about wanting to win a trophy, and that might be enough to keep him here for at least another season. Hopefully he stays for a long time, gets the number 9 shirt and get Shearer's record, but then, that is getting carried away, I suppose. What was the other question about the Champions League? Yeah, I mean, it's there, but you're looking at, the top 3 places are probably gone now, so it's 4th and we think 5th, so it's going to be tight. Man City are up there. There's some other good teams in and around it. Bournemouth fighting away for it. I think it's going to be tough, but it's more than doable. But they're probably going to have to win 6 or 7 out of the last 10 to ensure that they get there. And with Darren Eales, with the money for the summer, does sound like the PSR, the jaws of PSR are slowly starting to reopen, and there's going to be some money spent, and they do need it.
Do we expect then a busy summer for Newcastle? Do you think, and how important is the Champions League for that?
I think it's vital, and I think it will be a busy summer, but obviously getting into it is going to be the golden ticket almost to getting a marquee signing. But I think also there's going to be outgoings as well. I can see players like Sean Longstaff, Matt Targett potentially even. Dubravka has just signed the new contract, but if a bid comes in, then you could see somebody like him leave as well. I think it's going to be probably one of the most interesting summers we've had for a long, long time.
And for you, John, if we're talking about a number 1 priority position to sign in the summer, where are you looking?
By the way, on Europe, Shy Ben's getting out, so we'll go for it. We'll go for 100%. It. That's the only way to attack. Shy Ben's getting out. Greedy Ben's getting a lot, probably more than they deserve, so let's be greedy. In the summer, I mean, I think we need a goalkeeper. I think we need a right-sided centre-half. I think we need an outside right, and I think we need a centre-forward. And not to replace Isak, because we're going to flog him, but to be the backup to Isak, because we're very vulnerable there. Callum, bless him, is so injury prone, it's untrue, his contract's up. Usula is not the new Supermac, or certainly not yet, and he might be better out wide yet. But he's certainly, if we lost Isak for 6 games, we would be in trouble. So we've got to have somebody of experience to cover that. If I could only have one position, and by the way, if I only had one position, I'd be very upset, because we need the 4 positions. If we are in Europe, and we are in Europe now, we're in the Conference League at the least. If we're in Europe, this squad's got to be deeper than it is. And so we need all 4 positions. But outside right, and this isn't having to go at Jacob Murphy, he is battered well above his weight and been an eye-opener this season. He's been here for so long that, he's been here longer than the paint's been on the wall in the dressing room. I mean, he's been here in eternity. And he's dug in, and he's got his due reward. But I think he's a great player off the bench. If you're a top 4 side in the Champions League, he's a great player off the bench. He's not your outside right every game. And so that would be the position I would want to get somebody for certain.
Yeah, Aaron, I think outside right is probably the one that everyone would like to see the most. Are we all looking for a right winger above any other position? Yeah, a few nods there. I mean, Brian Mbeumo, Anthony Elanga, been looked at. They are liked by Newcastle United, but the bare minimum price for them is you're talking 50, 60 million pounds. So that shows you the outlay that's going to be needed in the summer.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's why Champions League is so key. But I think, John's hit the nail on the head there. I think, if you get a goal-scoring right winger in that, in the summer, Jacob Murphy essentially gets relegated to the bench. I think that's the only way you grow. Anybody who's listened to the pod knows that that's been my dream, to get a right winger in for about 18 months. It hasn't happened. It's the only position, actually, that Newcastle haven't strengthened since the takeover. You know, Almiron and Murphy, before Almiron left, obviously, were the only two in that position. So that for me is key, but I think you also probably need a young centre-back to come in to essentially replace Sharon Byrne. You probably need a new goalkeeper, I hate to say it, but I think you go out and get someone young for the future. And as John says, I think you need a really, really good backup to Isak so that when he does get injured, you know, you're there. But, I mean, look, John's wearing off on us because I'm being greedy now, not shy. So.
And talk of a new goalkeeper. James Trafford seems to be the number one name. Aaron Lee, are we all for? Does James Trafford top the list for Eddie Howe, do you think?
I think he would be the type of character to come in and do really well here. But I think for me, a centre forward is more important than a goalkeeper. I mean, they do have 4 or 5 keepers anyway. You know, it doesn't excite me, the signing of a goalkeeper, but, you know, if you're talking about throw Jonathan David in there from Lille, that would be the type of signing that I think people would be celebrating. Another centre forward would be fantastic. So, yeah, I prefer the offensive signings and the keepers.
I think we all do. But are we at a stage when Newcastle United and the board have to look at it and maybe look to break their wage structure, which we know has been kind of the buzz sentence, if you will? You know, we don't want to break that wage structure. But are we at that stage in the project where if you do go after the chap from Lille, he's not going to be coming on a low wage? You probably are going to have to make him the highest earner.
Well, it's going to soar past 150,000 a week at least this summer, I would imagine, and then moving in the next couple of windows, potentially we could see the highest earners ever at Newcastle on 200k. But when you look at the Man City lads,
Sure.
Arsenal, Liverpool,
Sure.
they're on 300k plus, which must be very nice. But at the end of the day, if you want to challenge for all the top trophies like Man City, then that's the money you've got to pay, and you know you've got to put it on the table.
Yeah, certainly. So, a final question then, gents. All about St James's Park, and we know the big debate is whether they stay, whether they go. I'll ask the audience first. Hands up if you want to stay at St James's Park. Hands up if you're open to moving. Okay, it's kind of split there, wasn't it? Kind of split. Maybe more waiting to stay in. John, I'll come to you first. What's your thoughts on it?
Very confused. As a traditionalist, and if you're my age, you're bound to be a traditionalist. You've got no option. Because my heart's been at St James's Park all its life, and it's been there 130 years, which is only slightly longer than I've been alive. I'm getting there, but almost there. If you want to stay at St James's Park, but you realise the restrictions that can be financially, and if we are going to bat, and every other club's moving to a stadium that's bigger and broader and more beautiful, and they're going to make more money, not just through the gates, but sponsorship-wise. If I'm going to move me the smallest distance possible. Move us a pitch size away into Leazes Park or anything. I don't want to end up, just because we're going to Townmoor on Saturday, I don't want to go to Townmoor every other Saturday to watch Newcastle United play. I don't want to go down onto the quayside to watch Newcastle United play. I don't want to go out to the airport to watch Newcastle United play. Newcastle are a city centre club with a cathedral on the hill, and that's wonderful, not just emotionally, the impact when you come over the Tyne Bridge and you come into Newcastle, and it is a cathedral on the hill. And I don't want to stray too much for that. I'll bite the bullet and move as long as I'm moving minimal.
Aaron?
Yeah, when the sort of stadium debate came about, I was very much stay. I think a lot of people in this room probably were. I think the club themselves know that there was going to be a little fight on the hands to get them to move. And I think, like a lot of people now, the closer it gets to a decision, I've massively came around to the idea of moving. John's absolutely right. I don't think anyone will disagree. It's got to be city centre. Leazes Park would be great. But for me, I go back to that Arsenal game and the PSG game. St James's Park is so good when it's rocking like that. They've got it perfect. It's probably a little bit too small, but it's perfect for the atmosphere. My only fear about leaving is that it becomes like a West Ham. It's a ball. They're too far away from the pitch. You lose the atmosphere. That's my only fear. But I think because of what it will do in terms of unlocking the doors for the club, the revenue, I think I'm now sort of leaning towards going.
Yeah, I'm the same as you, but I don't have that concern about the atmosphere, because you talk about those games and you look at the atmosphere down at Wembley. The fans were absolutely brilliant. I think it's about the people. and it's about the fans that make that atmosphere. Obviously, it matters where you call home, but it's about the heart and the passion of the fans. And as long as we shout as loud as we did against Liverpool in the final, against PSG on that wonderful Champions League night, if it's just over the road in Leazes Park, then we can make that a place to be feared if you're visiting. So I've got full faith that if they do move, we can recreate those special nights that we've seen, not just here, but down at Wembley as well. Lee, for you?
I honestly wouldn't want to leave St James's Park if you can get the capacity higher. And I mean, it's going to be difficult, don't get me wrong, but look at what's happened at Liverpool. They're still at Anfield. They've made it happen somehow. I would hate to see Newcastle move to, as you say, one of these soulless bowls where there's just no atmosphere, or we're relying on fireworks and stuff like that before the game kicks off and DJs and all that. That's not what Newcastle United's about. That's the heart and soul up there at St James's Park. So for me, if they can do something closer, maybe what Tottenham done, and we're sort of half still in that area, and we extend it towards Leazes Park, that for me would be the dream ticket. I wouldn't want to throw away all those years of history and lose that atmosphere.
Well, we'll wait and see. The decision probably isn't too far along to be coming. John, I just want to finish off this part of the show by getting your thanks for Eddie Howe and the team for, as you said to me last week, making an old man very happy.
And they did exactly that. I mean, everything, people have been staggered about you and I. You threw a question at me at the end of a podcast, and I went off on one of me Geordie passions, which sometimes happen, and I need dousing down with some water. But I went off, and really all I did was say what every Geordie feels in their heart. And because we've had humiliation at Wembley, I would suggest 5 times out of 5. And it's hard to take. And all I wanted was for them to realise that we are proud people. Give us our pride. And I would like to say to Eddie and to all the players that took part and to the coaching staff, thank you. We asked for so little, in my opinion. We asked for you to care. We asked for you to go out and look at the shirt and feel proud to be in that shirt. We asked for you to represent us the way we would represent ourselves. And you did exactly that. And that hasn't always happened. In fact, it's very rarely happened on the big stage. And it happened that day. And I looked round every man jack in that team and I thought, you'll do for me. You perform like that, you will do for me. And I would like to say to every one of them, Char, you did what we all needed. I have spent 70 years on domestic cups, and I've been like the little lad who's got his nose pressed against the tuck shop window, looking inside at all the goodies, and I can't get to them. And now I've got the biggest lollipop in the shop, and they give us that. I couldn't get that myself. I could just be there. We kept the faith for all these years because we knew one day some manager and some players, helped by owners, will come along and give us what we deserve. We are cradle to death fans. We don't go off like the sandwich game. Who's popular? Oh, we'll support Man United. Oh, it's Man City these days. We'll go there and we'll support them. No. If you're born here, you support Newcastle United, and it doesn't matter if they win nothing more than Northumberland Senior Cup. We got our pride back because you all give us our pride back. We'll not forget that. We'll love you for it. There will be you in history for the rest of the time. But in just saying to you, thank you so much for what you've done, I will add one thing. Don't think the journey's over. Don't think that you can rest on your laurels now. Don't think we're grateful for the rest of our life. We want you to go on and keep doing. You've shown what you can do. Do it again. And then do it again. And then do it again. We want more, but we will never say or lose our thanks to you. But don't just hang about on your hose and expect me to buy you white wine and a cigar. Come on, let's do it again.
There we go, ladies and gents. Thank you very much. A huge round of applause to Lee Ryder and John Gibson. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we come back with James Perch and Ryan Taylor. So get yourself a drink. Thank you very much.